Hello and welcome to the A to Z of social entrepreneurship with myself, Nziki Mkize. We've been running through the alphabet to just highlight a few concepts around social entrepreneurship and social innovation. For you, if you have an idea or if you're already running your social enterprise, or even if you run a nonprofit and you've been thinking about how you can pivot and create a more sustainable business around the work that you do, and it doesn't matter if you're a for-profit or non-profit, a social enterprise can do good with or without a profit mission. So let's get into this particular edition's alphabet. We're on the letter K in the sequence, and I was thinking about a couple of different things that I could do for the letter K, and what I settled on was K for key concepts, which is a little sneaky because that means I can talk about a lot of things, but I really wanted to highlight about 7 key concepts just to think about, because even with the whole alphabet, it's not enough to get through everything that you should think about around social entrepreneurship, right? So the 7 key concepts that I want to share with you that are really sort of the foundation of what social entrepreneurship is about, and you can read up about more details on these in the social innovation atlas, and there's a lot of other free resources online that you can find. So the first key concept is innovativeness, that when you're thinking about social innovation, when you're thinking about social entrepreneurship, and if you click back in the series, the letter I that we did was innovation, right? So to think about how do you innovate differently? How do you come up with something new? How do you come up with something fresh? How do you convert raw materials? How do you combine different raw materials and resources to create value in your new way, or to create value to a new audience, or to create new value to an existing audience? But to just be creative and innovative in how you deliver that and create a means of exchange around it, right? And you can literally innovate and disrupt in whichever way you want. You could challenge processes, you can challenge current thinking, you can challenge the way things have always been done, how services have always been delivered, how certain products exist in the market, or even the composition of certain products, right? There's no limit to the extent to which you're allowed to innovate. So really think about how innovative is your business or your product or your service, right? Or the way in which you choose to do things. And part of how you innovate is also what sets you apart, and ultimately your ability to innovate can shift you from traditional business to an innovator. The second thing is creation of social change, right? So all innovation, especially when you're running a social enterprise, is really thinking about how do you galvanize social change around particular issues. How do you change people's social behaviors, right? Part of shifting people and social behaviors is simple things like when you look at people littering, for example, a person might not think that one piece of paper on the floor makes a difference, but if everybody doesn't count their one piece of paper, then that adds up. You've also seen this with like the straws campaign and plastic straws and ending that, but it could be as small as that, and it can grow exponentially to other things. So really thinking about how do you create social change and the kind of impact the social change that you're wanting to drive, and this could be around consumerism. So if we look at the trend around, not the trend, because it's not a trend, it needs to be how we do things. So if you look at the growth of consciousness around being a conscious consumer, buying more consciously, if we look at the shift towards slow fashion, so more and more people being mindful of fast fashion and its impact, and making buying decisions to change that and to transition into being more conscious consumers and holding big companies accountable around greenwashing. Those sort of things are social change, and it can be things around purchasing, or tangible things, to things like fighting for injustice and changing how people view justice and how people view who deserves justice and the processes and the systems that exist. An example of that is seeing how people around the world came together for the Me Too movement, for Black Lives Matter, and so forth. And those kinds of coming together to challenge dogma, to challenge systems, to challenge the way that things are typically done, is one form of social change. So your business doesn't necessarily have to be product or service based, but it could be around sparking a complete different change in society, and that has tremendous value as well. The third thing is embeddedness in a specific community, right? So when you're thinking about social change, when you're thinking about social impact, well, of course, every business wants to scale, wants to be big, wants to be global, but that's not necessarily always the case. And for me personally, what the beauty that I think you can find in social entrepreneurship is that if you can figure out how to solve a problem in one particular community, so be able to embed your solution in that community, be able to help community members to take ownership over that particular solution. You're then able to say for similar contexts around the world, so whether it's a solution for an issue that's common in a lot of developing or emerging markets, if you figure it out in one community, you can scale in the sense that it can be duplicated in other communities. So really think about that and how you can embed the social solution, the business innovation, the product innovation, the shift for social change in a particular community that can really take ownership of it and run with it. And another thing is the adoption towards virtuous entrepreneurship activities, right? And for this, for me, I just think around good virtue, right? So thinking beyond profit maximization is going, how can we do good in our business holistically? How do we do good across our processes? How do we do good in terms of our employee treatment and how we treat our customers? How do we do good in our strategy? How do we do good in our business motives and so forth? So really thinking about how you can be virtuous in your entrepreneurial activities, and not just the outcome but also the input and the motivation behind those. The fifth thing is diffused ownership, and a big part of this aspect of social entrepreneurship is understanding that everybody owns something, right? So it's thinking about the entire value chain, it's thinking about the entire ecosystem, and thinking about how do you diffuse ownership amongst all of those people. And this is something that we're seeing a lot with how cryptocurrencies are set up, that if you can look at cryptocurrencies in certain communities, and quick plug, if you go to Mentor magazine, our June issue, there's an article in there around community currency, and that's written by Rebecca Mkamelo, and you can really just see in there these concepts around how decentralized currency is a concept and how that is growing and the impact of that and how that has the opportunity to create new levels of inclusion. There's also an article in that particular issue from Wenzile Madonsela Msimango, who speaks about the impact on the African story, and she talks about cryptocurrency in an African context and how we ensure that that's aligned to our constitution, right? So whatever your business idea or innovation is, what great success is through social entrepreneurship is figuring out how you spread out that ownership, where typically in corporate and private companies and listed companies, the ownership is shareholders, so people who have the money and can afford to buy into the business. And yes, that can still be part of your structure for a social enterprise or your nonprofit, but also what you want to think about is how do people who can't afford to buy into the business but have great ways of adding value or being part of the ecosystem, how do your beneficiaries, how do your suppliers, how do your consumers have the opportunity to come together and share in the impact that you are creating? And finally, financial sustainability, and that's a big thing for me, that nonprofits do fantastic work, but if grant funding dries up or if your funders choose to support a different initiative, what happens then, right? And so for me, a big part of running a social enterprise, and why I do believe that social enterprises need to figure out how to be more financially sustainable, and that doesn't necessarily mean making huge profit margins, but even if you're operating and are able to break even, that's really key, because if you're able to be financially sustainable, you can continue with the work that you do and with the initiatives that you're running. And for me, overall, ultimately, I believe that the goal of social entrepreneurship, or the goal of any social intervention, should be to completely eradicate the issue that exists. And I heard a wonderful quote, I can't remember who it's from, but they were saying that the difference between charity and philanthropy is that charity seeks to alleviate a pain or a certain level of discomfort, whereas philanthropy seeks to make sure that that issue ceases to exist in society completely. And that's what we want, that ultimately the beneficiaries that we support, the communities that we support, are empowered to a certain level where they move from the base of the social issue that they're currently facing to the next level, and ideally shifting from people who need to be supported and subsidized to consumers who can engage, who can purchase, and who can take ownership of the interventions that we are introducing. So that's a quick summary on 7 key concepts of social entrepreneurship. I hope that gets your brain thinking around how you can incorporate those in your business, or even if you just have an idea, is to think about how do you build your idea up across those 7 different key concepts. I wish you all the best in creating a business that has impact and growing that business. And if you want to be part of a community that can support you in doing that, please head over to our website and join our Social Impact Founders Club. See you in our next edition. Hi there, if you want to join our Social Impact Founders membership community here at Mentor, which is a global mentorship network supporting female social entrepreneurs, head over to our website, www.mentor.co.za. You can also send us an email at info.co.za, and you will receive your free copy of a social impact guide on how to start a business and life of purpose and impact. See you online.